Hello and welcome back. Today I'm actually going to be doing a review of an entire series. The series that I'm going to be talking about today is all available through Kindle Unlimited if you have that, which I do, and I didn't know that actually until my mom was like, "Hey, you never use our Kindle Unlimited." And I was like, "We don't have Kindle Unlimited." And she was like, "Yeah, we do." Gee, Mom, thanks for letting me know. I could have been reading so much more. But anyway, moving on. The series that I'm talking about today is King Arthur and Her Knights by K.M. Shia. K.M. Shia is an author that I have read before and that I really like, and so when I realized that pretty much all of her books, I think actually maybe all of them, are available on Kindle Unlimited, I decided I wanted to give this series a try because it was her first series. King Arthur and Her Knights is yet another King Arthur and the Sword and the Stone retelling, but what makes this one special is that King Arthur, as you may have noticed from the title, is not your typical King Arthur. The King Arthur in this story is in fact a woman. Her name is Britt Arthurs, and she is an American teenager from the 21st century, who is pulled back in time. How is she pulled back in time? Well, the original and real King Merlin, before King Merlin, before finding out who he was, decided that he wanted to run away and become a farm boy because he'd fallen in love. So Merlin goes and he casts a spell on the Sword and the Stone that will allow it to search through time, and whenever it finds someone who it thinks is capable of being King Arthur, it will grab them and pull them back to their time. And so what the sword ends up doing is it ends up honing in on Britt in the 21st century and yanking her back in time. Then they have to deal with the fact that, oh, our King Arthur is a woman. So Britt not only is pulled back in time and originally thinks the entire thing is a crazy dream, but she also has to disguise herself as a man. Like I said, it is a series. The books are all very short. I think they're about 100 pages each. The last one is a little over 200 pages. So, I mean, I read them in 2 days because I kind of wasn't doing much. I had a lot of free time and I just read through them and I really liked them. Obviously. One thing that I thought was really interesting about the series is the progression of the writing style. Like I said, it is K.M. Shia's first books that she ever wrote, and you can really tell that as you're going through the series because the first 2 or 3 are kind of meh, and then they get better as they go. Like any self-published books, it's not perfectly edited. I stumbled across spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, some sentences that didn't flow very well, but that's just something you accept in a self-published book. And I still loved it, and it didn't detract from the storyline at all. So Britt is sucked back in time, and she doesn't know much about King Arthur. She probably knows less than your average person, actually, despite the fact that at a very young age she was actually interested in medieval fighting, medieval martial arts is I believe how she phrases it, or medieval hand-to-hand combat. So she's not completely in over her head because she does actually know a bit about sword fighting and horseback riding. She also knows a little bit about, not a lot. Something that I really, really loved about it was when she was pulled back in time, she didn't forget about her own time, and it was really funny because she made a lot of references and a lot of jokes. At one point, Britt even says, "A Jedi gains power through understanding, and a Sith gains understanding through power." And everyone around her is like, "Oh, King Arthur is so wise." And she's like, "Oh, you guys are crazy, but okay." So, as I said, she doesn't really know a lot about the King Arthur myths, which is what I think makes it such a good story and so interesting, because Britt never really knows what's going to happen next. All she really knows is that King Arthur was a great king and he started Camelot, and he had the sword Excalibur, and then his wife ran away with Lancelot. And so fairly early on in the book, she basically tells everybody, if you meet anyone named Lancelot or Guinevere, please get rid of them. I don't want them here. It doesn't work out for her, unfortunately. And there are other funny moments that come about because Britt knows this story. Like when she goes to the Lady of the Lake to get her sword, the lady starts trying to give her other swords, not Excalibur. And Britt's like, "I don't want these swords. I know what sword I'm supposed to have. I'm King Arthur. I get Excalibur." And everyone around her is like, "Don't insult the Lady of the Lake. That's really bad." And another hilarious thing is when King Arthur's half-siblings start showing up, the ones that put spells on him and attempted to marry him, that he had incestuous relationships with, when they start showing up and trying to cast spells on King Arthur, Brit is not interested because Brit likes men, and so these spells don't work on her. So there's tons of hilarity there. And I can't tell you all of the members of this club because that would spoil parts of the plot, but Brit and the Lady of the Lake, who she ends up befriending, and another woman who she ends up befriending, start a Lancelot Hate Club, and I really think I need a t-shirt that says Lancelot Hate Club because that sounds amazing. Because I would also be a member of the Lancelot Hate Club because I've always hated Guinevere and Lancelot. And that's part of why I never really got into King Arthur myths, because I was like, well, I know how it's going to end and it sucks. Why would I read this? So whether you like King Arthur or not, or whether you are at all interested in stuff like that or not, it's a really good book. And like I said, parts of it are just laugh out loud, hilariously funny. Another thing that happens is, you know, Brit will reference Star Wars, she will reference The Lord of the Rings, she keeps calling Merlin Gandalf. But what I think is most interesting is how Brit's knowledge of King Arthur, her very limited knowledge, kind of hurts her. Because Brit knows what's going to happen, so she's trying to avoid it. And she has this guidebook that she brought back with her by accident that tells a little bit about King Arthur. And what Brit doesn't realize is, or what Brit never seemed to realize, is that as she does things, there are things in the pamphlet that change, and some names that change. So Brit thinks that she is stuck within having to be King Arthur of history. And what she really does is she changes the myths a little bit, but we also find out that even though Brit is not the King Arthur of the myth exactly, the myth has been rewritten so many times over history that it has completely changed who she is and who King Arthur is seen as in history, which is very true. The King Arthur of the legends is probably based on a real person. He obviously wasn't magic, and he might have been friends with a dude named Merlin, but Merlin was probably just a stoner, not an actual magician. There's a really good quote that kind of talks about that in one of the books. Stories in history are not unbiased. Each new generation will put their own thoughts and feelings into the past. So over the years, a fact that was inconsequential, like the age of a certain wizard, is changed. Perhaps a generation after you, storytellers will feel the need to reinvent King Arthur, and they will make Merlin old or Sir Kay cruel to you. So Brit has to learn, you know, how much am I going to let the legends impact me? And she also doesn't know a lot about the legends. There's a lot of gaps in her history. And there were times that I was sitting there going, no, Brit! But also not knowing the history saves her several times. And like I said, Guinevere and Lancelot do end up showing up, but they're not who you think, and they're not the kind of people that you think, exactly. So it's a really good book. It's a bit weird, and like I said, you do tell at times in the writing that, yeah, it's not exactly the best edited, and there's some issues, but that doesn't take away from it at all, and I loved it. Like, I have yet to read a book by K.M. Shia that I did not love, guys. I highly recommend her books. So that's my review of this series. Let me know down below what you think of it, if it's something you think that's interesting, if you have read it, if you have any other stories about Merlin or Guinevere or Arthur that you think I should read, because I do read historical fiction from time to time. Let me know down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Cat attack. Cat crawling under my bed. Okay.